can you describe, either in general or within a specific situation, like what your line one process is, like in terms of research or what have you, right? Something comes up and you're like, oh, I want to know more about that. Like, what do you do? Like, what, how does that work? Like, Debbie, you want to jump in and start with that?
Oh, sure. Do you have a moment? So there's different ways. So for instance, I remember when I started, I did my body mind coaching training, for instance, and I said to my husband, right, this is it. This is the last thing. Like, this is the last thing I'm going to invest in. And
no, it's
he
not.
looked at me and he's like, no, there's always going to be something else. I was like, no, this is it. And then, of course, in that period, I found human design, then I found quantum human design, then I found the G keys, and then now I'm doing Akashic healing. And so it just, I don't know if that's the same for everyone, but it feels like one thing leads into the next. And maybe that's also the manifesting generator part of it. But for me, like I can be watching a documentary or something like that, and they mention a book, or I hear music, and then I have to stop it, and then I have to, like, I will if I hear a song on the radio or the TV, and I don't know the title or the artist, I will Google the lyrics that I hear until I find out who it is. So that's one part of, like, I like to go deep, and I don't know if anyone's, I don't know if anyone's seen the Netflix documentary, which is Shazam. Yeah, I know, I don't always have that with me, but the documentary, like, don't bleep with cats, right? I don't know if you've ever seen that, but
I've heard of it. Yeah,
I'm willing to bet that everyone that made that documentary has a one line in there, because it's just going down, it's just investigating. And on the other hand, I have a lot of information. So I didn't know, I have so many daily on courses that I bought that I've never done anything with, but they're there. That's another thing, but that was kind of before I learned that I was an emotional manifesting generator. So I was like, oh, I need that. But the funniest thing happened a few weeks ago, where I saw this course come by, and it was a course, it's like a personal thing. It was around like menopausal stuff, which is, yay, I'm there. And so I was like, okay, that sounds interesting. So I purchased like $25. I purchased it, came with a workbook and a book, and so okay, but I didn't get the information. Like, I didn't get the email with all the information. So the next day I emailed them and I said, hey, listen, I purchased your course, but I didn't get the information in an email. And she said, well, you actually purchased this course in January already. I'm like, oh, I did. Like, that's another thing. Like, I have all these things, but I don't necessarily jump into them straight away. So I don't know if that's also a difference between having it conscious or unconscious, like just knowing that it's there somewhere. But obviously, there's so much that I forget as well, which I was like, okay, that's interesting. So I know.
We both have emotional authority, so I'm curious, do you feel like that slowed down a little bit for you? Because I will say,
oh yeah,
man, did I have fun saying no to everything when I first started. I was like, I'm just gonna start saying no to everything. Like, it was like the freedom to just, like, yeah, because I had that same issue. Like, I would be emailing them and they'd be like, oh, or I'd have like 3 different accounts for like Hulu, and I'm like, what? Why? It's like weird, and it's just like for how, and so yeah, I think like having that emotional wave, I feel like, is also a sense of protection for me, of just like not doing unnecessary investigating, not like buying something to learn more about something that I'm not going to care about the next day, kind of thing. So kind of like in a weird way has stopped me from going and just like taking things too far, or like stuff that I don't need to learn.
Exactly. And even it's as simple as, being invited into things like this. And when Marla reached out to me, what was the first thing I said? Can you give me some more information?
Can you give me the details?
You can give me some more
details. I do that so much with my friend. Can you give me the details?
And she's like, yes, I'm a one-line too. So I get you. I hear you. And it's not like, oh God, now she wants to know all this. No, it's like, yes.
So nice when the other person has it.
Yes.
I will say though, I noticed like I was nice because I wasn't the first person who commented it. And so you had already said like, I need the bio. And so I started like realizing what the bio you were looking for. And so I kind of investigated how that was like operating. And then I did and made sure that was correct. Cause like, I feel like you can also do it that way. Like if if you're not like doing it at first, then I feel like you can kind of like, I'm the person who will like read other people's things and try and figure out like, so it'll make it easier on the other person too. So
Yep, absolutely. I'm like, oh, I'm hearing some of myself in all this. Karen, how do you, so something piques your interest? What's your pattern process? How does that show up for you?
So I'm splenic. So it's a different thing in terms of like, it's existential, it's in the moment. And like frequently it comes from somebody else asking a question, like in a one-on-one with a client. Like if someone's taking a medication that I've never heard of, I'm like, okay, I have to research Strattera and figure out what a norepinephrine reuptake inhibitor does. And then I'll go and look that up, and then I'll be like, oh yeah. And like remember all the other things that I've researched about norepinephrine and adrenaline. So it's kind of, it's much more like it's very splenic to me that I won't know until something happens in my external reality that kind of prompts that. And in retrospect, I can look at my entire working life back to when I was like waiting tables in college. And like, this is way before I knew about my human design. I was working in a restaurant that had a wine list, and the manager told me that like the way you make big money here is to sell wine. And I was like, okay, I got to learn about wine, and not just learn about wine, but be like the #1 expert in the whole restaurant about everything and taste everything. Even though I'm allergic to wine, it turns out it wasn't very good for me, which like bad for spleen, but I was like, this is what a Cabernet grape is. And I'm not gonna be able to sell it until I'm fully in integrity, because I have internalized and I'm able to externalize, like obsessive almost. And then when I moved out of the hospitality industry, I worked in fashion, same thing, like a new collection would come out and I would go down these rabbit holes of like, what was Hedi Slimane thinking about in his life when he was inspired to make this collection? And I would go through this whole research thing of like, oh, it's all about Mick and Bianca Jagger, Rolling Stones, and like literally just like learning all these crazy things and just following my curiosity. And as a result, I had this like massive mental library of random stuff that's seemingly useless, but it's sometimes useful.
I think a lot of it's just for us too. Like I think it's just fun for us. You know what I mean? Like just like sometimes it's just fun to know that stuff. It's not for anyone else's joy other than just your own. Like you just find it fun for yourself, I think. And I am curious, do you have the 51 gate though?
Yeah.
Okay, so I have the 2551. I have that channel. So I was like, oh, I get that whole feeling of I'm not just going to sell wine. I'm going to sell it. I'm going to be the best at it out of everybody.
Like I have to be #1. And I have an undefined ego. So there's really no willpower behind that. There's no real drive. There's no fuel for competitiveness, but it's like a thing that shows up for me where I'm like, oh, I got to be #1.
Yeah, no, I will say my will gets things done though when it needs to. So yeah.
And I'm just listening to you and sort of your path and your determination. And it's just like, if you want to be the #1 expert, you can, because you'll investigate until that happens, right? Like, that's just like, that's how you do it. Even though obviously, you know, there's different ways that can happen and show up. And sometimes things just won't stick. Like, it's almost like they're just like Teflon, like they're just not meant to stick. It's like, okay,